In the frozen wilderness of northern Japan, where ancient winds carry whispers of forgotten ceremonies, exists a people so mysterious that the modern world has almost erased their existence entirely. Deep within the snow-covered mountains of Hokkaido, ethnographic evidence reveals the presence of an indigenous civilization that has survived ice ages, colonial suppression, and cultural genocide, yet possesses survival knowledge that could revolutionize our understanding of human adaptation to extreme environments. What ancient secrets did the Ainu hide from the world that allowed them to thrive in conditions that would kill most humans within hours? How did they develop spiritual technologies so advanced that their shamans could allegedly transform into animals and fly between realms? And why has one of the world's most sophisticated indigenous cultures remained virtually invisible to global consciousness? Tonight, we embark on an ethnographic journey into the hidden world of the Ainu, Japan's indigenous ghost people whose ancestral knowledge systems hold keys to human survival that modern science is only beginning to comprehend. The vanishing into legend, picture this: an entire civilization of hunter-gatherers who mastered survival in subarctic conditions for over 13,000 years, developing cultural adaptation mechanisms so sophisticated that they created a symbiotic relationship with one of nature's most dangerous predators, the Asiatic brown bear. These people, known as the Ainu, inhabited vast territories stretching from the Japanese archipelago to Sakhalin Island, from the Kuril Chain to the Kamchatka Peninsula, in lands they called Ainu Mosir, the land of the people. But here's where the mystery deepens. In 1869, the Japanese government declared these ancient territories terra nullius, empty land, effectively erasing the existence of a people who had developed one of the world's most complex animistic belief systems. How does an entire indigenous population of hundreds of thousands simply disappear from historical consciousness? The answer lies in what anthropologists now recognize as one of history's most systematic cultural extinction programs. Yet paradoxically, this very persecution has preserved knowledge systems that modern survivalists and anthropologists are desperately trying to decode. The Shamanic Survival Matrix. Deep within Ainu oral traditions, ethnographic records reveal the existence of male shamans who possessed abilities that challenge our understanding of human consciousness and environmental adaptation. These shamanic practitioners didn't just survive in hostile wilderness conditions. They thrived by developing what can only be described as a supernatural survival matrix. Ancient Ainu shamans would allegedly fly between the physical and spirit worlds, transform into animals to gather intelligence about weather patterns and animal movements, and maintain spiritual kinship with creatures that could either ensure their survival or cause their destruction. But was this merely primitive superstition? Or had these indigenous people developed altered consciousness techniques that provided actual survival advantages? Consider this. Ainu shamans conducted all-night ceremonies involving entire communities, using dance, chanting, and rhythmic instrumentation to achieve altered states of consciousness that enabled them to perform accurate weather prediction, locate game animals across vast territories, and diagnose illnesses using methods that modern science is only beginning to understand. Cultural survival data indicates that these practices weren't random rituals. They were sophisticated information-gathering technologies disguised as spiritual ceremonies. When a mother couldn't produce breast milk, Ainu shamanic healers would perform mountain ceremonies to receive the soul of a white birch tree, administering the tree's entire life force to save human lives. The tree would die within days, having transferred its vital essence to sustain human survival. This wasn't just herbal medicine. This was a complete understanding of bioenergetic transfer that suggests knowledge of life force manipulation that we've lost entirely. The Kamuy communication system. But the most extraordinary revelation lies in the Ainu's Kamuy belief system, a sophisticated spiritual technology that modern anthropologists describe as one of the world's most advanced indigenous consciousness frameworks. The Ainu didn't see spirits and deities as distant, unknowable entities. Instead, they developed a communication system with Kamuy, spirit beings that inhabited every aspect of their environment, from animals and plants to natural forces like wind, fire, and water. This wasn't primitive animism. This was an intricate survival network where Kamuy would visit the human world in temporary physical forms, providing gifts like meat, furs, and crucial survival information before returning to their spiritual realm. The genius of this system becomes apparent when you realize that the Ainu had created a psychological framework that kept them in constant awareness of environmental changes, animal behavior patterns, and resource availability, essential intelligence for survival in extreme conditions. Every hunted animal, every gathered plant, every natural phenomenon was treated as a conscious entity capable of communication and reciprocal relationship. The Kamuy weren't worshipped. They were negotiated with, honored, and maintained as part of an ecological information network that provided real-time data about survival conditions across vast wilderness territories. The Bear Ceremony Code. Perhaps the most mysterious aspect of Ainu culture involves their relationship with the Asiatic brown bear, one of the world's most dangerous predators. While most human cultures developed defensive strategies against large predators, the Ainu created something unprecedented, a spiritual adoption system for bear cubs that culminated in elaborate sending-off ceremonies called Iyomante. Here's where anthropological anomalies emerge that challenge conventional understanding of human-predator relationships. The Ainu would capture bear cubs and raise them as family members for years, providing them with the finest food, treating them with reverence, and forming genuine emotional bonds. Then, in carefully orchestrated ceremonies lasting several days, they would ritually kill the bear in elaborate celebrations designed to send the bear's spirit back to the Kamuy realm with maximum honor and gratitude. But ethnographic evidence suggests something far more sophisticated than simple ritual sacrifice. The bear ceremonies served multiple survival functions. They provided high-protein meat during harsh winter months, bear fat for lamp fuel and waterproofing, and bear hides for cold-weather survival gear. More importantly, these ceremonies maintained psychological relationships with the bear population that reduced aggressive encounters and provided advance warning of bear movements through the spiritual information network. The Ainu believed that well-treated bear spirits would return repeatedly, ensuring sustainable hunting relationships with bear populations. Modern wildlife biologists studying traditional Ainu territories have discovered that bear populations remained stable for centuries under this management system, suggesting that these primitive ceremonies were actually sophisticated conservation technologies. The seasonal survival calendar. While modern humans struggle to survive single nights in wilderness conditions, the Ainu developed survival rhythms so precise that they maintained a completely oral calendar system synchronized with environmental cycles that most people today couldn't recognize if their lives depended on it. Their survival calendar wasn't based on arbitrary dates. It was a sophisticated environmental monitoring system that tracked resource availability with deadly accuracy. Paikal, their spring season, focused on hunting Kim un Kamuy, the awakened brown bears emerging from hibernation at their weakest point, while simultaneously gathering the first edible plants like butterbur and wild garlic that would prevent scurvy after long winters. Summer, or saku, involved the complex processing of giant lily bulbs and the preparation of materials like linden bark fibers and halibut skin that would be essential for winter survival. These weren't casual activities. They were precisely timed survival technologies that required generational knowledge transfer to execute successfully. Autumn brought chuk, the salmon season, where the Ainu would secure massive quantities of what they called Kamuy chel, the spirit fish, using fishing techniques so advanced that they could capture enough protein to sustain entire communities through brutal winters. But here's the mystery. How did they preserve these massive salmon catches without refrigeration in a way that prevented spoilage for months? The lost preservation technologies, cultural anthropologists studying Ainu food preservation have uncovered survival technologies that modern survival experts are desperately trying to reverse engineer. The Ainu developed methods for processing and preserving salmon, wild plants, and other resources using techniques that created nutrient-dense survival foods capable of sustaining human life in extreme cold conditions for extended periods. They would dry salmon using specific environmental conditions, create preserved meat preparations with precise fat content ratios, and process wild plants into concentrated nutrition sources using fermentation and dehydration methods that maximized caloric density while preventing spoilage. These weren't random food preparation techniques. They were sophisticated biochemical processes that required detailed understanding of nutrition, preservation chemistry, and environmental timing. Even more mysterious, the Ainu developed starch extraction and preservation methods using giant lily bulbs that created emergency food supplies capable of sustaining communities during unexpected resource shortages. They would ferment and dry these processed starches in ways that modern food scientists struggle to replicate, creating survival foods with nutritional profiles optimized for extreme cold weather survival. The poison arrow mysteries. But perhaps the most closely guarded Ainu secrets involved their hunting poison technologies. Every family maintained hereditary recipes for surku, a sophisticated toxin mixture derived from aconite roots and stalks, enhanced with additional ingredients, including dog's bane, boiled harvestman juice, and other components that created arrow poisons capable of bringing down large game animals with single shots. These weren't crude plant preparations. They were complex biochemical formulations that required generational knowledge transfer and precise ingredient ratios. Each family's poison recipe was different, suggesting that the Ainu had developed multiple pathways for creating effective hunting toxins adapted to specific prey animals and environmental conditions. The mystery deepens when you consider that these poison preparations had to remain effective in extreme cold conditions, be safe for hunters to handle during preparation and application, and provide reliable lethality without contaminating meat that would be consumed by entire communities. How did an indigenous people without modern chemistry develop such sophisticated toxicological knowledge? The spiritual survival network. Underlying all Ainu survival technologies was their concept of Ramat, the sacred life force that connected all living beings, natural forces, and objects in an invisible network of spiritual energy exchange. Modern anthropologists are beginning to understand that this wasn't primitive superstition. It was a sophisticated psychological framework that maintained constant environmental awareness and ecological sensitivity, essential for survival in extreme conditions. The Ainu believed that everything in their environment possessed Ramat that would return to its originating Kamuy after the physical form died or was destroyed. This created a survival mindset where every action had spiritual consequences that would affect future resource availability and environmental relationships. Abuse natural resources, and the Kamuy would withdraw their cooperation. Maintain respectful relationships, and the Kamuy would continue providing survival necessities. This spiritual survival network functioned as a distributed intelligence system where information about environmental conditions, animal movements, weather patterns, and resource availability was constantly circulating through the community via ritual practices, ceremony protocols, and daily spiritual observances that kept everyone connected to real-time survival data. The resistance underground. But here's where the Ainu story becomes truly extraordinary. Despite facing systematic cultural genocide, forced relocation, language prohibition, and legal erasure of their existence, significant numbers of Ainu maintained their ancestral knowledge systems through underground resistance networks that preserved survival technologies and spiritual practices for over 150 years of active suppression. Anthropological anomalies suggest that Ainu families developed sophisticated strategies for cultural preservation that included hiding traditional practices within seemingly assimilated lifestyles, maintaining secret ceremony locations in remote wilderness areas, and passing critical survival knowledge through coded oral traditions that appeared to be harmless stories or songs to outside observers. The 1899 Hokkaido Former Aborigine Protection Act attempted to complete the cultural extinction process by rendering the Ainu legal wards of the Japanese state. But ethnographic evidence reveals that Ainu communities responded by developing parallel identity systems that allowed them to function in Japanese society while maintaining core cultural elements in carefully concealed underground networks. Children were taught Japanese in schools while learning Ainu survival skills and spiritual practices in secret family settings. Traditional knowledge holders maintained wilderness ceremony sites that remained hidden from authorities for decades. Most remarkably, Ainu resistance networks began connecting with other indigenous peoples globally, learning survival strategies from similar cultural extinction scenarios and adapting resistance techniques developed by indigenous communities worldwide. The shamanic revival today. Something unprecedented is occurring within Ainu communities that suggests their ancestral knowledge systems contain survival information that modern society desperately needs. Contemporary Ainu activists and cultural practitioners are experiencing what can only be described as a shamanic revival, where traditional practices suppressed for generations are spontaneously re-emerging with apparent supernatural timing. Young Ainu people with no formal training in traditional practices are reporting dreams and visions that contain accurate information about ancestral ceremonies, survival techniques, and spiritual protocols they had never been taught. Elders who had maintained silence about traditional knowledge for decades are suddenly feeling compelled to share information they had sworn to protect, as if responding to some collective spiritual emergency signal. Cultural survival probability calculations suggest that most indigenous knowledge systems facing similar suppression should have been irretrievably lost within 3 generations. Yet Ainu communities are recovering sophisticated survival technologies, spiritual practices, and ecological knowledge that shouldn't have survived the systematic destruction they endured. The modern mystery. But the deepest mystery involves what's happening to people who seriously study Ainu survival methods and spiritual practices. Researchers, anthropologists, and survival enthusiasts who immerse themselves in authentic Ainu knowledge systems report developing enhanced environmental awareness, improved wilderness survival capabilities, and increased sensitivity to natural phenomena that cannot be explained through conventional learning processes. Some describe experiencing what they can only call shamanic consciousness, altered awareness states that provide access to environmental information that shouldn't be perceptible through normal human senses. Others report developing intuitive knowledge about plant properties, animal behavior, and weather patterns that proves accurate despite having no scientific training in these areas. Is this psychological suggestion, or are Ainu spiritual technologies actually capable of enhancing human survival capabilities through methods that modern science hasn't yet recognized? Genetic isolation coefficient studies of Ainu populations suggest they may have developed unique neurological adaptations that enhance their environmental sensitivity and survival capabilities beyond normal human ranges. The hidden knowledge emergency. We are living through what indigenous knowledge experts describe as a hidden knowledge emergency. Climate change, environmental destruction, and social collapse are creating survival challenges that may require the recovery of indigenous technologies that mainstream civilization has forgotten entirely. The Ainu possessed solutions to problems we're just beginning to recognize. How to maintain sustainable relationships with dangerous wildlife populations. How to survive extreme cold conditions without external energy sources. How to preserve food without industrial technology. How to maintain community cohesion during resource scarcity. And how to develop spiritual practices that enhance survival capabilities rather than escape from survival realities. Their Kamuy communication system may contain psychological technologies for maintaining environmental awareness that could prevent the ecological blindness driving modern environmental destruction. Their community ceremony practices may preserve social cohesion methods that could address the isolation and mental health crises plaguing modern societies. Their poison preparation knowledge may contain biochemical insights that could revolutionize medicine and food preservation. The awakening. But something profound is stirring within global consciousness that suggests the Ainu story is far from over. Indigenous peoples worldwide are reporting spiritual awakenings, knowledge recoveries, and cultural revivals that seem coordinated by forces beyond normal human planning. Traditional knowledge holders are emerging from decades of silence to share survival information they had protected for generations, as if responding to some collective survival emergency signal. The Ainu are at the center of this indigenous awakening, serving as bridges between ancient survival wisdom and modern survival needs. Their cultural hybridization strategies, developed through centuries of resistance to cultural extinction, may provide models for preserving indigenous knowledge within modern contexts while maintaining spiritual integrity and practical effectiveness. Their experience surviving systematic cultural genocide while maintaining core knowledge systems may contain survival strategies that other endangered cultures can adapt to preserve their own ancestral wisdom traditions. The call of the Kamuy. As we stand at the edge of environmental and social collapse, the Kamuy are calling through the dreams and visions of contemporary Ainu practitioners, offering ancient survival wisdom to humanity's modern survival crisis. The spirits that guided Ainu ancestors through ice ages and cultural persecution are awakening within a new generation of indigenous knowledge keepers who understand that their survival wisdom is no longer just for the Ainu. It's for all of humanity. The sacred life force that the Ainu called Ramat is stirring within people worldwide who are being called to remember indigenous ways of knowing, indigenous methods of surviving, and indigenous relationships with the natural world that could determine whether human civilization survives the crises we have created. The Ainu survived by maintaining reciprocal relationships with the spirits of their environment, honoring the sacred life force within all beings, and preserving knowledge systems that connected them to survival wisdom that transcended individual human limitations. Their example offers us a pathway back to spiritual technologies that could restore our relationship with the natural world while providing practical survival capabilities that modern civilization has forgotten entirely. The bear spirits are returning. The salmon Kamuy are calling. The ancient calendar is awakening. And the Ainu, Japan's hidden indigenous people that nobody talks about, are emerging from the shadows with survival wisdom that could save us all. But will we listen before it's too late? Will we honor the sacred life force within indigenous knowledge systems before they disappear forever? Will we learn from the ghost people who survived cultural extinction to preserve wisdom that modern civilization desperately needs? The Kamuy are waiting. The ancestors are watching. And the survival of indigenous wisdom traditions may determine whether human consciousness evolves or faces extinction in the darkness that approaches. The choice as always, remains ours to make. But the window for making it grows smaller with each passing season. And the Ainu know better than anyone how quickly ancient worlds can vanish into silence, take